I've got a room full here at Velma Jackson, and we're recording this for our friends at Madison Central Regional in Germantown. And we've been talking about the law and public safety career cluster. And we had, I've had judges and people in the past, but several of these students ask about what it takes to become an attorney. So before we get to some of the things you've done, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became an attorney and how what the path is to get there, so they understand exactly how difficult it is to get where you are.
Hey everybody, my name is John Lassiter. I'm so glad to be talking to the class and you bright students. And it was a really long time ago that I was sitting right where you guys are in class and middle school and high school. And back then when I was your age, I didn't think about becoming a lawyer. I really didn't think a whole bunch about careers at that point. I just tried to learn the things I was interested in, and I guess the notion that you guys are thinking about that sort of stuff already at your age is awesome. So it begins with reading and writing. And I don't know how many of you guys like to read and read stories, but I think I was doing a lot of that in high school, reading books that were recommended to me by others, or books that were given to me to read, by teachers. And I think, a lot of, it might not always be the funnest thing to read. You guys have other things you can be doing with your time, I'm sure. But I'll tell you that it exercises your mind. It makes you, start to imagine things and put yourself in other people's shoes. It's a really important thing to do, and you'll be better for it. Your teacher and I met in college. So I was fortunate enough, my mother taught at Mississippi College. So I got to go to school there because she taught there. So that's just another example of how privileged I was for that, to be able to do that. But college is extremely important if you want to become a lawyer. If you have aspirations to do other things, maybe you like fixing cars, or maybe I don't know what it is you like to do, then maybe college isn't always in the future if you want to do certain things like that. And there's no problem with that. There's a lot of money to be made doing those type things. But if you want to become a lawyer, then you do have to have a college degree, a four-year education in college. And so Professor Poggett and I went to college together. And when I was there, I chose a major, and I continued to major in English. So I kept reading stories and kept learning how to write. And, you can major in anything really and become a lawyer. Accounting, some people focus on the numbers side of things and start to really learn businesses. That's an important part of the law that you can do. You can do criminal justice, certainly. And I think you guys have been talking some about that and public safety and public service. So you can major in that. You can major in history, where you have to write and kind of learn a lot about, historically what laws have been adopted, and start to learn about the Constitution and human rights and things that we have in this country, which is a really, really good beginning to a law, or you can do pre-law. And I think a lot of colleges offer like a pre-law package now that you can just tell them, hey, I want to become a lawyer, and they give you a assortment of classes to take. So that's a really good option that you could do there. But so I did those things, and I majored in English, and then I went to the Mississippi College School of Law when I was done with that. And that's another 3 years. So you go to college for 4 years, and then, you go to law school for 3 years. I think there might be some law schools that offer a shorter program there, maybe a 3 year and 3 year thing or something like that. But law school is typically 3 years. So I went straight to law school, but I was 25 years old when I finally got done, with law school and graduated there. And then you take a test to pass the bar exam. It's called the Mississippi Bar does it. And whatever state you ultimately want to practice in, you have to get licensed there. So you take that exam, and if you pass, they give you a license, and you can start practicing law. And they call it a practice because And I'm sure you guys have heard that. Maybe some people practice medicine, some people practice law. And I think the underlying fact of all that is that you get better at it every day. You're not perfect in the beginning. Certainly you don't know everything that you learn over time. I've been doing this for, oh gosh, Greg, 17, 18 years now. And I don't know half of what I need to know, I think, but I'm learning more and more every day. And it's a really good profession. You get to help people. That's kind of why you go into it. And you know, all your family members will be calling you, asking you for help. You know, they'll be asking, hey, can you help me with this will? Hey, what happens if I get in trouble here? And it's kind of neat to be able to help, you know, to help those people who don't know everything. So yeah, let me close my door. Hold on one second.
And that was a great description. Now, before we came on, we were talking, I was telling them about, you know, me and you used to watch Law and Order and just be in awe at Angie Harmon, just nailing people on the witness stand. But that is actually a very, very, very minuscule percentage of what actual attorneys do. It is not the stuff you see on TV is just, I mean, you know, it happens, but it is, you know, that's just for drama. That's not really a everyday life of an attorney.
I think that's true. I think that, you know, very important things happen in a court of law. And so I don't want to understate. I mean, you have people's lives sometimes in the balance. So from that standpoint, there can be very serious issues that are taken up in court. But yeah, the made for TV stuff, and we did love Law and Order. And I'd be lying if I said that Jack McCoy, you know, wasn't a huge reason. You know, that character on Law and Order was a huge reason that I was interested in the law and why I went to law school, because of some of that drama. But no, you know, there's two types of law. There's criminal law and then there's civil law. And so criminal law is you know, related to, you know, criminal offenses that have occurred where you've broken like a statute or a law, you know, robbery or something like that. You know, and in civil law, it's just a dispute over money between two parties. So you say that somebody owes money to me, or a business might say that you haven't paid back the loan to me, and that might lead to a legal action. And that would be in civil court. So to put it in perspective, I would imagine that in civil court, in civil cases, 98% of those cases are settled without going to trial.
Yep.
So think about that. Only 2 out of 100 actually go to trial. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I've probably tried 10 to 15 cases. So maybe once a year. And that's just not what now that's not to say that there aren't other hearings that you have on motions or smaller issues, but the ultimate case, a trial of the entire case, I probably do about one of those a year. There's things called I don't mean to get into too much of it, but there's arbitrations. You can have some trial-like things that occur outside of court. But anyway, so that's how rare it is in the civil side. The criminal side, I would think that number is up just a little bit. I bet you try, you know, roughly 10 out of every 100 cases. So it's still a very minuscule number, but yeah, it's so when you go to law school, like you might think that you're going to be doing a bunch of cross-examining a witness and things like that. And there's aspects of that in your practice, no question, but it's not quite like TV makes it out to be. And I hope that doesn't throw any of y'all off or make you think that it's an undesirable profession, but it's just I guess, you know, temper expectations as to what, you know, it's all going to look like.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that, you know, there's a lot of aspects of your life that might require an attorney that doesn't involve anybody going to jail or anybody paying penalties or anything. You know, if you're going to buy a house, you got to have an attorney that's going to sign off on the mortgage papers. If you're going to get married, you're going to need to get somebody to draw up your papers, you know, prenuptial agreements, last will and testaments. If you're going to get divorced, you're going to need an attorney. If you're going to adopt a child, you need an attorney. So there's a lot of aspects of the legal field that you know, is not bad. There's a lot of positive things that you might need an attorney for. That is, you know, everyday stuff.
Yeah, no question. I can't see the room, but I'll just tell you that you can look around the room and just think about your lives, and really the law can touch every aspect of it. Somebody gets hit by a car, you know, something, a light pole falls, and breaks, are into somebody's house. That's a legal issue, and insurance and law will kind of determine, who owes who what. And certainly, there are going to be aspects of your life in the future, whether you're trying to adopt a child or whether you're trying to get a divorce or things like that, which I would hate, but you will definitely need some guidance, because if you don't have it and you try to do it alone, the reality of it is you can get yourself into some trouble, or you could lose some money. And it's always better to go ahead on the front end and have somebody that's a professional look at those things, somebody that can really understand, the risk involved. So absolutely.
All right, and I got some great questions I want to get to. Before I get to those, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how you were in the news a couple of years ago, having a huge part in the changing of the state flag. So why don't you talk a little bit about the hand you had in that and the process of how that came into play?
Sure. Well, let me say first off that I'm totally thrilled that the state flag changed. It was something that needed to be done 100 years ago, and so it finally happened. And I hope that young people in the state, look at, I don't know how important that issue was for you guys on a daily basis, but one thing I'm really passionate about is keeping young people here in Mississippi, where we can all represent our home and try to make our home better. And you guys might have aspirations to move off to California or Minnesota. I certainly understand stuff like that too, moving far away and finding yourself, and that's important too. But we would love for you guys to feel welcome here and to make a life here. And part of that passion kind of led me to the state flag and wanting to change the state flag. And Greg was asking about why a law degree is important. And I will tell you this, that if you study the law and you go to law school, it really teaches you how to strategize, and you start to think about things in a different way. You start to understand how to leverage certain things, or how to argue that something should happen, and maybe change people's minds on something. And so I sat around, and Greg knows this, back in 2013, 2014, you guys were probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe younger back then. But we started, I tweeted at the NCAA, and I told them, because I guess if you guys like sports, I thought to myself, it's kind of unfair that we have this flag and that, we're able to, well, we have these schools here that are Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Southern. And I thought to myself, man, we play all these baseball tournaments here, and they're big money. They host these regional tournaments. And I kind of thought to myself, man, if the NCAA would change that rule because of the flag and not let us host these baseball tournaments here, that could have a real impact. And I think maybe, lawmakers and people that matter and make these decisions might look at that and say, hey, it's costing us a lot of money. People that otherwise wouldn't have changed the flag, might look at it and say, hey, this is something we need to do. So it was an idea that I had way back. And then in the beginning of 2020, this is back before COVID. I can't believe, we've been dealing with COVID and everything for so long, but I finally just decided that I was sick of the flag. So I called the NCAA. I just started calling people up in Indianapolis and talking to them and kind of telling them that I didn't think the flag was ever going to change unless they helped out and they did something. And so that started back in January 2020. And I met a wonderful woman up there who was very passionate about helping us make this change. And she really took some of the things I was saying to heart and believed that if the NCAA did something, that it would change the flag. And with the George Floyd death and all the stuff that happened last summer, Black Lives Matter movement, all the protests and the things that were happening in the social consciousness of America, like I really felt that it was a time that change was happening. And so I called her one day and said, hey, if there was ever a time to try to look into this, I think the time would be now. I think people's temperature is such that they might change the flag, which I'll tell you, I never believed the flag could change in my lifetime. Anyway, so she did it. They issued a statement saying that they weren't going to allow any more tournaments in Mississippi until the flag was changed. And I'll tell you, the flag changed 11 days later. A lot of other things happened, and a lot of people came together to make the change. But she did a phenomenal job. Like the NCAA is this really big organization. I'm sure that, Greg could tell you that, they don't do a lot of changing nimbly or quickly. I mean, big organizations like that takes a lot of people coming together to make a change. But she did an incredible job of understanding what I was telling her. She's not from Mississippi and didn't know the history of the flag so much, and why it needed to change. But as we told her and she started to understand it more and more, I mean, she finally, she did it. She got the president of the entire NCAA wrote me an email saying, you know, thanks for the advocacy. And I really felt like it was that. It was kind of me being a lawyer and convincing them to do it. And I'll tell you, I got 30 Mississippians, people that played college sports. Some of you guys might be athletes and you might go on to play college athletics or you know, maybe even professional athletics, you know, who knows, but I got 30 former athletes, including Coach Lindsey Hunter. What a great guy. But they signed my petition to the NCAA asking them to make this change. And they're real heroes because they didn't know when they took that stand. And you'll have a chance in your life to take a stand for something you believe in, and it won't be easy. You know, and it wasn't easy for them because I think a lot of people, a lot of their friends probably didn't want to change the flag or something for the wrong reasons or whatever, or just to keep things the same, you know, which is never a good idea, just to maintain the same because you don't like change or whatever. But it wasn't a very popular thing for them to do at the time, and they didn't know that it was going to be successful when they signed that petition. But then it happened, you know, and so they're to be, you know, commended for being brave like that and coming out against the flag. So anyway, there's a lot more to that story, but I'll just tell you that I think that my law degree helped me be able to think about that. Greg knows some things from back in college where I was already arguing back in college, trying to get people to change things that were wrong about the school we went to or whatever. And if you see, I think the point that I would make about all that is, you know, the chances were slim to none that this flag was going to change. And I'm just one person, you know, and I'm just a random 40-year-old in Jackson, Mississippi with, you know, works a job every day and has 3 kids or whatever. But I was mad about that old flag. I didn't want it around anymore. And so I started calling people and just randomly talking to them about it and trying to figure out a way, you know, to get it to change. And so I guess the point that I would make to you guys is don't ever think that you're too small to change something, because I mean, I really believe that it wouldn't have changed without the NCAA's action, and it wouldn't have changed without my action when I look back at it. And I really helped out. And it's something that I probably, I don't know, it's just something that, you know, it was a shot in the dark, right? It was just something that I tried and it worked out. And so don't ever think that you can't make some change, because you can.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I do have some questions here, and these are all great, and these are all ninth graders. So this is impressive. They're thinking like this. But this is Selena Johnson, and she asked, "How hard was the bar exam?"
You know, there are different bar exams that are harder than others. So California and New York bar exams are famously hard. You know, and Mississippi's is probably middle of the road hard. Like you have multiple choice, probably like 300 multiple choice questions, which are very, very difficult. They try to trick you in them a little bit, and you've really got to study to understand kind of where the questions are going. And then there's 6 essay questions. And a couple of them will be taken from years past. So if you study for this thing for like 3 months, you really do. And so by the time you study, if you really study and you order these, they're pretty expensive, but you order these like study guides and things like that that are made, and you study them. And I know that you can pass the bar exam. It was hard, but I think more than anything, you're just nervous about failure, right? Like, you know how when you're going into something and you're just kind of worried that it's not going to work out, you know, I think that's even, you know, more of a issue, I think, going into it than how hard the test actually is. So probably another lesson to be learned there, you know, just persevere and get through it. And, you know, have you ever had something in your life where you thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, but it always works out in the end, right? Like you kind of get through it, and hey, even if it didn't go terrifically well or whatever, it didn't go very well, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be, and you kind of move on. Like, I think anything in life is like that. Maybe the bar exam's like that. So,
okay, this is a Jada Green, and she asked, "What is your strategy going into a case?" Or how do you determine your strategy going into a case?
That is a great question. That is a great question. There's a lot that goes into it. So you have to think about your client's resources. So how much money they can spend. Like a lot of times, and I do a lot of civil law, right? So it'll be a fight over some money, a contract that says that so-and-so had to build this house and they had to do it like this. And when they didn't do it that way, do they get paid the entire contract or something? So, when you get a case, you look at it and you say, okay, is this case over $5? Is it over $5 million? And that would be the first question you kind of ask yourself. And if it's $5 million, then it's probably going to be a little more complicated. And, your client's going to want to spend more money to make sure that it works. If it's only over $10,000, which is a lot of money to me and you, but it's a smaller case to maybe a bank or something, then you wouldn't spend as much time on that case. So you kind of have to figure out how to dedicate your time. Then you want to look at the documents. You want to look at what the contract says, and or you want to look at what the testimony is. If somebody fell down at a grocery store and hurt themselves, you kind of want to see what their medical damages are. If it was like a slip and fall and they left, the store had noticed that there was water on the floor, but they didn't clean it up, and then an old woman fell down or something. You see cases like that. That's a really important part of it. Then once you understand what the contracts or what the documents or what the testimony is, then you search online and you look at what the case law and the statutes say. So you look at the applicable law, and it might be, sometimes it's statutory. Sometimes, a statute just says, hey, if the grocery store didn't clean up this mess, if somebody falls, they're going to be liable. And if that's what it says, it's really hard to get around that, right? So you have to start arguing that, the grocery store didn't have notice that there was damage there or a mess there, or, we cleaned it up, but then a kid came through there and threw Cheerios everywhere and it was messed up again. We didn't have notice of that. I don't know. A lot of things like that come into play. But so if I'm strategizing for a case, I want to know who all my witnesses are, what all the relevant documents are that I'm trying to get in the evidence, and then what the law is on it. And that's housed in a thing called Westlaw that's on your computer. I don't know if y'all use LexisNexis or anything like that when you search for stuff in ninth grade, but you'll learn how to do all that stuff and research as you get into high school and into college. And it's kind of like a Google search. Like you put in, grocery store, fall, woman, and you search it, and then you see what pops up in the cases, because a lot of what I do is I'm making an argument that's been made before, right? Like my case is going to be similar to something that's happened before. And so you want to go and see how the judge ruled last time. Because thing usually is the judge, if he or she ruled that way the last time, they're probably going to rule that way again. And if it looks like it's going bad for your client, then you got to make that phone call to your client that says, you know what? I don't know if there's a way for me to get out of you paying this $25,000. It's not going to be good. So you can pay me all the legal fees you want, but at the end of the day, we're probably going to lose. So do you want to offer to settle this case at $15,000? And so a lot of negotiation and psychology comes into that. And it's actually a pretty exciting part of my job, trying to negotiate the best result I can for the client based on the facts I have. So.
Awesome. And I don't think anybody realizes how much thought and planning goes into that. This is Jamarquez Davis, and he asked, are any cases you ever have similar to ones before?
Yeah. So first, like when I started the practice of law, like every case was new. And that's one thing that's pretty exciting about law is that, every case you deal with has new people. Sometimes like new instrumentalities or machines or something, something that you don't know a whole lot about. But I do a bunch of construction work, and you wouldn't believe how much people fight about if somebody's building a Lowe's or a Walmart, out in Canton where you guys are. You're in Canton, right?
We're in Camden.
Oh, Camden. Oh, yeah, that's even closer to where I grew up. Okay. So think about the Walmart in Canton. Which is not at Camden, but Canton. But, when they built that thing, what was it, 7 or 8 years ago, they had to move all sorts of dirt. Like when you build a building, you got to move dirt. You wouldn't believe, and some of you guys have seen it, like they have to flatten it out. They have to compact it to make sure that the dirt's not going to move for like 50 years. And Walmart has all these standards, and you'll see it if you drive by the interstate. It's got all this riprap and stuff in the front because the worst thing you can have is water on a building, because the building will deteriorate much sooner than it should. Anyway, so I do a bunch of that work. And I think to answer your question is, now that I've been doing it so long, I do see cases that I've had before. And I can pretty much, when the client calls me, I can say, look, this is how the issue is going to be decided. Here's going to be some things we can argue, but at the end of the day, it's going to look like this. And clients really do appreciate when you have that knowledge. So if you do practice law, I think one thing to think about, and we kind of call them niches, right? Like you find something that you like to do, and if you keep doing it, it'll make you a better lawyer in that, and you can kind of become the expert in something. And that's kind of, I wouldn't call myself an expert by any stretch, but if somebody calls me on a construction case, I know all about it. And I didn't know anything about construction when I was in college, when I met Greg in college. So I've had to learn it over the past few years. And so, yeah, you can run into the same cases again and again. So.
This is Nakiria Taylor, and she asked, what are the alternatives to going to court on a case?
Yep. So this happens a lot. And if you have your client and let's say that the trial date's coming up in 2 weeks, and you wouldn't believe the work that goes into preparation for like a trial. You got to get your witnesses lined up, and you kind of want to do outlines of questions you might ask, and you got to have all your documents together. And some of these cases can have, thousands of emails that you have to go through to figure out which ones are relevant and which ones aren't. And so you get all this information during the case, and then you have to streamline it and put it together to where you can make a presentation to a judge or to a jury. And it just costs a lot of money for the client to pay lawyers to get the case there. And then at trial, there's a winner and a loser. There always is a winner and a loser. And so your client is thinking about that. And let's say they're owed $5 million, or no, you'll say your client's being sued for $5 million. If they go to trial and they lose, they got to pay you. They got to pay the $5 million they lost. They might have to pay the other side's attorney's fees based on whatever the contract says. So it could be a really bad proposition for them if they're not sure if they're going to win or lose. So there's some risk there, and that risk has a value to the client. And so the alternative is the client might say, look, I don't know, we probably owe some money here, but I don't want to pay $5 million. So why don't you call the lawyer on the other side and see, because, the other side's thinking, well, hey, we might lose. The judge might say that we can't have our case, and we might lose and not get paid anything. And so then you make the call to the lawyer on the other side and you say, look, I like your argument here. I'm not so sure that you're going to win on that argument, but my client doesn't want, there's a risk to all this. They don't want to pay $5 million, but they might pay $1 million. Let's just, here's $1 million. Like, let's not go to trial. And then the other side might say, no way, we're taking that to trial. We're going to trial. Or the other side might say, all right, not $1 million, but how about $2 million? And then I'd go back and call my client and say, well, they'll take $2 million for it to go away. And my client might be like, we can't pay two. We're not going to pay anything over one. So you just go to trial, but that's the alternative, is a settlement out of court. And actually there's lawyers who specialize in, it's called mediation. They're called mediators.
Yep.
And they bring both parties together, and both parties have been fighting for a year or something about this case. And they go and you sit in an office somewhere and you talk about the merits of your case, and the other side says, well, this is what we're going to say. And the mediator might say, look, I've heard both sides. I'm not a judge. I can't rule on this, but I'll just tell you that the judge is going to rule against you and for you. And so y'all need to settle this case right now. And they'll actually help you settle. And look, a settlement is great. Neither party loves it. They always kind of upset about it, but it's great because that means that they don't have to spend more money on lawyers, and they get to get on with their lives. There's an important part of this psychologically, where you get in a fight with somebody in court and it just takes away some of, it's on your mind a lot. You got a lot of other things to do. You're trying to take care of your family. You're trying to get to work, but you got this on your mind. And sometimes when that court case ends, it's like a weight's lifted off of you. And so I've been able to do that for my clients a lot, where they haven't had to go to court and that weight's been lifted off of them, and they might have not gotten all the money they wanted, but they got what they deserve, the money they deserve. And so that's an alternative to court.
All right. This is Jacayla Page, and she asked, obviously you're very busy. How do you make time for your family?
That is a tough question. People always talk about work-life balance, but I'll tell you guys, I get to the office about 8:00 in the morning, and I leave about 5:30. Now I will take a lunch every now and then. And part of this job is, you'll have a lot of projects going on and you have a lot of deadlines. So, you're trying to juggle things, but I might go home and take care of the kids and see them because I want to see them every day. And they might go to bed at 8:00. And then, like you guys, when you wait to do your homework, and you got to do it right before you go to sleep, like sometimes that happens to me where I got to get the computer out at 8:00 and maybe work till 10 and then go to sleep. It's not every day. And I really do, at this point in my career, I don't try to work a lot of weekends, but I'll be honest, it's a tough job and you work a lot. And sometimes if you got a trial starting on Monday, you might have to work to prep on it on Sunday. And I don't love doing it, but I guess for me, it's not always the quantity. I probably don't have as much time with my family as some other people do. But what I try to do is make that really quality time. So when I get home, and I'm not always perfect at this, but when I get home to my kids, I try to put my phone away. Greg knows this about me. We watch a lot of football and basketball and baseball, but I try to spend that time with my kids and read to them and maybe go outside and throw the baseball, whatever, if it's still sunshiny outside, but it's not easy. And different, look, I work for I probably work more hours than a lot of lawyers. Some other jobs that you where you work 9 to 4 and then you go home and you don't have to worry about 20 clients right now that I'm working for. And so when you have that many people and you're trying to juggle that, it can be difficult sometimes because you're answering an email at night or whatever. But also, another thing you can do is you can just tell your client and say, look, your case is important to me. I'm going to work on it. You have to trust me to work on it. I'm not going to be able to update you every day on this. I'm not going to be able to update you every week on it. But I'm working your case and you got to trust me and I'm going to keep you in the know. But set some expectations. And I think that's true for anything you guys do is, I am the world's worst. And I don't know if you've listened to any of this, but a little bit of advice here of something that I've learned is I'm the world's worst about making a promise to somebody and saying, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it to you on this day. And it makes it really difficult for me because then I'm up late, working, trying to finish it or whatever. Or, I'm emailing them the day before I told them I was going to get it and say, hey, I'll get it to you. I need another 3 days to get it to you. Well, the answer to all that would have been for me just to tell them that it was going to take till Friday to get it to them in the beginning, right? What's it say? You overpromise and underdeliver, and you want to underpromise and overdeliver. Is what you want to do. You want to tell them you're going to get it to them on Friday, and then actually get it to them Wednesday afternoon. And they love that. You want to promise your client, hey, this case might settle for $150,000, but then you settle it for $125. And it's like a surprise to them. So. And I think that would work in any part of your life. So, absolutely. If your mom or your dad are asking you to do something and you say, hey, I'm going to do it like this or whatever. And then you beat what you told them. They love that. And I think that's words to live by. Don't go promising something when you can't deliver it.
I just got one more from the students. This is Keisha Daltrey. And she asked, does anything in this job ever traumatize you?
That's a good question. I definitely think there are people that work in the law that have traumatizing cases. I can't imagine defending, like, say, a child predator or something like that. Somebody that has been terrible to kids or something. I wouldn't be able to represent them and be, exposed to some of that. it would be really traumatizing for me. And there's people that do it and do that type of work, and it's incredible because, look, everybody needs a lawyer, and everybody has a constitutional right to a lawyer, and a lawyer has a job to do, and that is defend his or her client. And sometimes, look, sometimes doing that and that duty that you're called to do as a lawyer is not easy.
Yep.
You know, you might not even like your own client. You might not like what they did, you know? And so from that standpoint, I don't know if it's traumatizing, but you can always be conflicted about it. And I think you have to kind of retrain yourself to think, look, I had a job to do and a duty, and I have a sworn oath, you know, to do those things, and then do them. Traumatizing. It probably doesn't seem as big a deal as those constitutional type criminal defense. I mean, those cases mean somebody's life, and those are big time cases, and that might be the type of work you want to do. In my work, there's sometimes where I'm dealing with some really large amounts of money, you know, and maybe somebody in the office at the company that I'm working for made a mistake, and they just didn't add it right, or they didn't make sure all the documents were signed, and it's cost their boss a lot of money. And you know, from that standpoint, you know, I try to connect with that person. You know, we're on the same side. I try to understand what they're going through, but they're thinking, man, this is my job on the line. Like, if we lose this money, the boss isn't going to give me another chance. And so, lawyer, I need your help. I need you to defend me. I need you to get us out of this. And so from that standpoint, it can be really important, you know, what I'm doing. And so, and I want to do that for them. But no, I don't like to lose. And I think that, so it's not traumatic in the same way that it would be like criminal defense work, but I have lost before, you know, and I mean, totally lost, and had upset clients. And then, look, I've had cases that I thought I was going to lose that I've totally won, you know, and so you can't always know what a judge is going to do. That's kind of the awesomeness of the system is, you know, a jury and a judge, they make their own decisions. And you can try to guess as to what they're going to do because you know people, and, you know, psychologically you understand how people think, but you really don't know until you hear that verdict, you know, what's going to happen. So it can be pretty nerve-wracking sometimes, but I try to keep it in perspective. You know, just like I was telling you guys, you know, you go through something, and at the end of it, you know, you just got to have faith that things are going to work out and that somebody's looking out for you. And so, you know, in the end, it all works out, and you win some, you lose some, and just try to keep it in perspective. And the most important thing in your life, and Greg knows this, is your family and your friends, you know, and just, you know, take care of that first, and the rest will work itself out. Right. So.
Yeah. And I just got, and last question, and we thank you so much for joining us. I know you're extremely busy. But, you know, I know you're a Germantown parent, you know, your kids are in the Germantown zone, Madison County schools. And our friends at Germantown are going to see this later, Miss Parks and Miss Self, and our at Rosa Scott, Miss Stewart, and at Ridgeland as well. So we got a room full of young smart Black students here. We're going to have some Spanish speakers that see this later, some Asians, and obviously the people that look like you and me. But at the end of the day, you said that you want these kids to stay in Mississippi. So what is going to make Mississippi so attractive for these kids to stay and become great, successful adults?
That's a great question, Greg. It's, you know, I have not always, well, let me say this. I think that times in Mississippi are changing, and I think they're changing for the good. I think that a lot of things that went on way back when your grandparents, you know, were my age or you know, younger than me, you know, those things are in the past, and I hope they become further and further in the past, and that we can, that this state can see, because it's look, this state is the most diverse state in the entire union.
Absolutely.
We all look different, right? Like, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in this world who are figuring out that diversity, like in diversity like that, that's where the best ideas come from. That's where the most change comes from. You know, you can build a product or create a service that looks really, really good if you have a diverse range of thoughts and you have a diverse group of people, because your value is that you bring your own experience to whatever is going on. And so I think your voice, you guys don't understand the power that you hold. Because there's a lot of people trying to be younger in this world. All right. I know. Hey, Greg, would you like to be younger?
I know both of us would.
Would you like to shave about 15 or 20 years off your life and do it over again?
Absolutely.
I think I would. Well, guess what? You guys have got youth in spades. So you are a powerful group of people. And don't let anybody make you feel insignificant or not valued. And if they're making you feel that way, they're wrong. And you need to let somebody know how wrong they are, because Mississippi we have an issue here. I'll just tell you, and I don't shy away from it. People like you, you go to high school, you go to college here in Mississippi, and then you know where you go? You go to Nashville, you go to Atlanta, you go to Dallas, you go to Charlotte, wherever you might end up living. And you do it because there's a lot of other young people there too. And the beauty of some of those places are that you can just be you, and you're celebrated for who you are and your youth and all the things you're going to be capable of and all the things you're going to do. And here in Mississippi, we are thinking about that. And people are starting to understand the value of that. And they're also starting to understand that we're spending a bunch of our money educating young people who then turn up and leave. And so how do we make people stay? That's the question we're asking. And there's a lot of reasons to stay. This place, we have a lot of, first of all, your family and a lot of loved ones are here, right? And that's a big reason. It takes a village, and it's nice to grow up around familiar faces and people that have your back. So I think that's a selling point that Mississippi has. Mississippi has an abundant, the natural resources we have here in the land. You guys know that. It's always been an agrarian economy here. It's just a real selling point. And I'll tell you this, it's a lot easier to buy a house here and get more house than it is pretty much anywhere else in the country. Absolutely. So, property is cheaper here, and that's probably not something you're thinking about as a ninth grade, but I promise you, as a 25-year-old, when you get that first job, you'll be thinking, okay, how much money do I have every month? Okay, how much can I pay to rent? How much can I pay to mortgage? How much can I pay to food? It's just something you start to think about. And I think that you'll find that your dollar goes a lot further here than it does some other places. And but look, all those things, people are working actively to bring more jobs here and better jobs. But a lot of it's going to depend on, the young people who come up and blaze their own trail. Look, you can work from home now. A lot of people do it. You guys did, I'm sure, Zoom calls for class last year. I'm glad. I think y'all are back.
And we still have virtual days. So, and we're still doing distance days built in.
Well, that is a changing dynamic. No question. I can work from home every day and nobody would even care. So long as you get the work done. So you guys are going to have freedom of movement when you work. You're going to be able to go where you want to go and do what you want to do. And so I think that is going to be a benefit for a lot of small Mississippi towns, because you can go buy, a nice house and do it in Ripley, Mississippi, and work, wherever you want to work, and for any big company or whatever. But I don't know. You guys just need to continue to communicate with your educators, with your school administration, with the people that come and talk to you on career day or whatever about what you're looking for out of life. And it's going to be their job to be able to create, those type of things for you, but they need to start thinking about it even more than they're already doing.
Absolutely.
So I would just, if you guys know state leaders, if you know politicians, you need to tell them, look, I want more things to do. I want to be able to go to a safe place and see a concert. I want to go and see more football games or basketball games. I want somebody to redo the Mississippi Coliseum, and us to have big concerts there and stuff like that. I just think all those things are important, because life is about having some fun too, and you guys need those experiences. And some adult needs to be making sure that we bring stuff like that here. So I hope that all makes sense. If I could summarize everything I just said, it's that you have immense value, you have true value, and that this state needs to start catering to what you guys ultimately want out of life. Because when you're in your early 20s, we want you to stay here and build a life and raise a family here. So anyway, you're only ninth graders, though. There's a long way to go before you get there. But I just want you to know there's people in Mississippi thinking about that, hoping that you choose to stay here.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for joining us. I know you're really busy. That was some great stuff. And if we have any more questions from any of the other teachers, I'll make sure to pass those along to you. And like I said, a few hundred students are going to see this at some point, and we thank you so much for joining us. But I'll be assuming, man.
All right. It was my absolute pleasure, guys. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.